I'm Eric from Alabama.
And I'm Jerry from Boston, Massachusetts. It's another Sunday podcast. Hello, Eric.
Hello, Jerry.
How are you, my friend?
I'm well. How are you?
Hey, I am doing better than I deserve.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it's another Sunday podcast.
Yeah.
Before we get rocking and rolling here, want to send a shout out again, as we always do, to our listeners. We are humbled by the comments. We're starting to get some comments in and some suggestions. Thank you very much. Please keep them coming. We've got some guests that are going to be joining us in some upcoming episodes. Thanks to our listeners for their suggestions, and some of our listeners will be our guests. So I want folks to stay tuned to that. Our listenership is growing, so we appreciate you guys sharing the podcast. We have a guest with us who appeared back in December, and he has the most downloads of all of our episodes to date. I don't know if you remember when we had this guest on. We asked him if he would ever come back. He is a man of his word. Check this out.
The album is released. I hope you'll come back and join us and on the show, and we'll promote that out there for you, and maybe can hear a tune or two from the album on that.
So without further ado, why don't you introduce our guest?
Please welcome Taylor Bloom.
Taylor.
Good evening.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited.
We are very excited to have you back. Thank you for being true to your word. Not that there was ever any doubt.
I don't know if this is the time, though. Like if this is the comeback when you're rich and famous time. I need to be richer and more famous.
Well, that'll get you back again, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, at the end of this episode, you have to say, "Come back when you're richer and more famous."
Excellent. We'll make a note of that, Eric. So we're happy to have you back. We did talk and say when you release your album that we would love to have you back, and you have released the album entitled "My Father Before Me." So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
It is a great album. I have burned 4 or 5 virtual vinyl copies of it. How is it going? What's your thought on it?
Well, it's been pretty cool so far since releasing it. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. There have been a couple of listeners who have reached out and really articulated what the album means to them, and it's clear that it's been it's had an impact on them, and that's really a wonderful thing. It's one thing to have a bunch of fans who sort of listen passively, but what's really rewarding as a songwriter is to have people who are able to reach out with very articulate commentary on what it is that speaks to them and why. And so there have been a few people, yourself being one of them, Jerry, who have articulated their enjoyment in a very specific way, and that's really meaningful, because as a songwriter, you're dropping little secret notes and things everywhere. And so it's fun when someone picks up on oh, I love that you did this here. And it's I didn't think anyone was going to notice.
Yeah, exactly. It's for a debut album. And I think I told you privately that, this did not sound like a debut album. And of course you've got wonderful musicians behind you, as well. And it really, really shows. We're going to play some songs tonight, or in this episode, from the album, but I certainly encourage everybody to go out wherever you stream music. I believe it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's just fantastic, and I continue to listen. And there's a few songs in there that are earworms for me, and I find myself just randomly driving. All of a sudden, I'm humming some song from your album. So that's
awesome.
Supposed to be a good thing. Yeah, that's a great thing. It's absolutely wonderful from the first song to the last song. Musicianship, and anytime you throw a Hammond B3 in there, you've got me. You've got me. And anyone who knows me knows that I am in love with the Hammond B3, and I wish I wish that was an organ that I could play. So I just love the sound.
Yeah, me too. There's one of the tracks on the album is a song called Ball and Chain, and it was the first song we worked on from the record. And the whole thing was a pretty collaborative process of being like, maybe you play this, maybe you play that. And everyone sort of like working with each other and figuring out how their thing complements the other person's thing. And so Alec Hamilton, the guy who's playing keys and piano on the record, laid down a piano track. And I was like, Alec, this sounds awesome. Do you think it would be weird if you played some organ too? And he was like, organ and piano together are one of my very favorite things. And so if you listen to it, you can pick up on both of them in there.
Absolutely. There's a thing that as you know, and most of the listeners that know me know that I'm a huge Springsteen fan. I don't think I've mentioned it on the podcast, Eric, before, but maybe 60, 70, 80 times. But one of the things that I like about the E Street Band is that they have the ability to fill in spots where you might just get a simple drum beat or just a simple chord on a piano. What they do is Roy Bittan and Max Weinberg and everybody actually, and that always put in a little bit extra something that just kind of stands out, just kind of flies off into the air there, part of the song. And and I'm not describing it very well, but that's exactly what I hear in all the songs that you have, especially with Alec and the piano and a beautiful piano solo in a couple of those songs. Same thing with Mark on the bass. It's just incredible. And Bob on the drums. Everybody. There's a little something in there that just grabs me. And it's like, it's something you don't expect. It's just not just that simple chord, same, and it's just all of a sudden something just comes out of the blue and just makes you go, "Oh, where would that? Where's that?" It just sounds great.
Thank you. Yeah, that was exactly what I wanted, really, because all of the guys who played on the record. Well, I can't say all because there are two string players who I actually never met, who are featured in City Sidewalks and Pour One Out for Buddy. But the core band on the record. Well, I've played with all of them before. We all toured together in the Simon and Garfunkel story. But even though we were playing, Simon and Garfunkel music, I had a sense like I you're on the road with someone, they're musicians, they play a lot, whether they're doing the show or not. So I picked up sort of like each of their styles. And I, when I asked them all to be involved with the project, I tried to make clear, and I think throughout the process made clear to them that like, I want your sound on this record. Like I don't want you to just be, like a session musician playing the chords. Like I said that to Mark a bunch of times because he's such a wicked bass player, but I just be like, Mark, I want to hear like you playing the bass on this record. And he would, send me some scratch tracks, 5 or 6 different takes on a song. And he'd be like, from like first to last, they're like increasingly more noodly, like the first one's very basic and the last one is like very out there, very, very Mark. And I'd be like, that's the one I want. Almost every time I'd be like, give me take 6. I want the one where you're playing like a wild man, and that's the one that stands out.
And that's exactly what it sounds like.
I was just going to say that's one of the things that was sort of like a huge boon to the recording process and also kind of a bummer about the recording process. Because, the guys have so much fun playing together because they're so great at what they do, that like, it was kind of, because the whole album was recorded in isolation. I recorded all of my parts in Scout's parents' basement and all of the guys recorded at home. Bob, the drummer, bought a bunch of new gear to record. He wasn't doing it just to record this album because he's a drummer and he does a lot of session work, so he had to start doing that from home anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is just that I love the way the whole thing turned out, and I'm looking forward to a day when we can all be in the same space and maybe playing the music together. I would just love for that to happen someday.
So have y'all played live yet?
Not this music.
Okay.
Yeah, we've played a bunch of shows together playing Simon and Garfunkel stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And before we started on this project, there were a couple of sound checks where I would play some of the songs that were on the record. I remember one time I think we were playing in Orlando, and I played "Don't Hang Up the Phone" at a sound check. Because the way we do our sound checks is like I'll usually start, since I'm doing the Paul role, and then Ben will come up and he's doing Art Garfunkel. So we'll get the room tuned for our voices and my guitar, and then the band will come in. So one day I got up there and our sound guy was like, just play whatever you want. And so I played "Don't Hang Up the Phone." And it was so funny. We like went to get lunch afterwards, and Bob was like, that was a really sad song, man.
That song brought me to tears.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. It's a love song. It's incredible.
Yeah. So it's funny to hear musicians like that. I think that was Bob's way of like complimenting the songwriting, but like musicians express themselves through music. So like oftentimes they're not so articulate. He was just like, man, that song was a bummer.
We're gonna play a tune in just a second. You talk about Bob, and you had done a crowdcast not too long ago, and he just seemed like he was just having so much fun.
Oh man,
moving from room to room to room, just kind of chilling and stuff like that. He's like somebody I want to know. I want to meet. He just sounds like he's so chill. Yeah,
he's the best.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. He's not only is he like incredibly well read and intelligent, but he's the sweetest guy I've ever met. He can find something to admire about everybody he meets. He's one of those people, a lot of people cannot engage in like a philosophical or a political discussion in a like intellectually honest way. Like there's no reason to get into a discussion with someone unless they're open to having their mind changed. He's one of the only people I've ever met who can talk to you about something, completely disagree with what you think, and be like, yeah, no, I can see how you would feel that way. He's just the best. He's awesome. And he is an amazing drummer. Jerry, I don't know if you heard this on the album release party on Crowdcast, because it was kind of getting wonky at this point. The gear was all going haywire. But Josh Turner, who's the guy who mixed the record, told a little anecdote about he'd been sort of sending mixes to a mix engineer friend of his to just sort of get comments and stuff on them. And this engineer was dumbfounded that Josh hadn't edited any of Bob's drums. He mixed them, but he wasn't like cutting and splicing and fitting shit together, because Bob's he's a pro. He's a total pro.
He's the old school member of the group, isn't he?
Yeah, man. He's the oldest member by like 30 years, and he's got the sense of humor of like a 12-year-old boy. He's awesome.
Well, inside of every grown man, there's a middle school boy.
Yes. We just hope that the reverse isn't true.
Well, I think this is a good time to play a track from the newly released Taylor Bloom album. This is actually the title track, called My Father Before Me. Do you want to set this up before we play it? A little bit about the song?
Yeah, sure. So I came up with the name of the album before I wrote this song. My Father Before Me. It's just a phrase that kind of popped into my head, and it meant a lot to me. And I can talk a little bit more about that later on, maybe. But then I was thinking to myself, like, man, it'd be really great if I could have a song that was, the sort of like the song on the album. And I had been playing around with different things, different musical themes, and some different lyrics and stuff. And after I had done the bulk of the recording for the album, Scout and I came back to New York. We were here over the summer, and I was sitting on a bench on a pier on the Hudson River one day. I rode my bike down there, and the sort of like lyrics from the top of the song came to me. And sometimes when I'm thinking up new lyrics, the like melody and the chords will happen in my head too. And I'll like race home and like make sure that it works the way that it did in my head. And that's kind of how it went with this one. So it all kind of like appeared in my mind. I was sitting there like frantically like typing out these lyrics on my phone, like don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. So yeah, I can talk more about the themes and stuff afterwards if we want, but I think that'll do it for now.
Awesome. Here is the title track from Taylor Bloom's My Father Before Me.
The cityscape is blue-gray like the ridges of my adolescence. No matter where I go, seems I'm surrounded on all sides by bigger things. I don't see so many stars these days, but streetlights have their own sweet opalescence. I've learned the more I know, the more confounded I become, and the only way to get out is to sing. Well, I never used to sit upon park benches, and I never used to miss you. The last time I sat down to eat some pancakes, I didn't think of my physique. It might just be a respite from the trenches, and it might just be what friends do. My pastime is to look back and to frown on my mistakes, till I start to feel I long since passed my peak. But I wake up in the morning like my father did before me, and I sip a cup of coffee that I hope is better for me than a strong dose of the cable news I thought might reassure me, as I make all of the same mistakes my father did before me. There's parts of me that wish I could move forward with that self-same reassurance. Everyone I know seems to defend the righteous truth of their beliefs. Carrying the truth in my breast pocket surely would test my endurance. It seems to me the less I am convinced I know the truth, the more I can rely on some relief. But I wake up in the morning like my father did before me, and I sip a cup of coffee that I hope is better for me than a strong dose of the cable news I thought might reassure me, as I make all of the same mistakes my father did before me. Father did before me, and I do all sort of things throughout the day to reassure me that my life is independent of the things that made it for me. And so I make all of the same mistakes my father did, that my father did before me.
Wow.
Man, I tell you what, it feels good to watch someone mouthing the lyrics to something you wrote. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, don't know the lyrics to all the songs, but I think maybe
no pressure.
The four, yeah, I got to learn them all. That's awesome. Talk a little bit about the guys in the band, if you would. I heard that mandolin at the end there.
Yeah. So that mandolin is actually Josh Turner. So Josh Turner is, I mean, most of the people who know me on YouTube probably know me through Josh Turner's channel. He is a prolific cover artist on YouTube, and I think it was 2018, maybe it was 2018. He came out with his. No, it was 2019. He came out with his first original album of music, As Good a Place as Any, which I think is just an awesome album. Proved that he's also a great writer, apart from being a great musician in general and a great mix artist. But so I asked him to come on board to mix the record. And there were a couple of times during the process where all of the guys would send in their stuff, and there'd be a section when we were like, we need a little something right here. Or mostly it was because I hadn't had the foresight to be like, we're going to need this, we're going to need that. So on My Father Before Me, I knew we were going to need something to have a solo, because I really wanted there to be a solo in the middle there. And we just hadn't decided what it was going to be yet. And I texted Josh and I was like, maybe we could get a banjo, because Josh plays banjo. And he goes, let me try a mandolin. And so the way that he sort of did it every time was, anytime we needed him to add something in, he would say, I'll just do one. If you like it, we'll keep it in. If you don't like it, but you want me to do something else, then maybe, well, I'll charge you a session fee for it, which I thought was totally fair. So that was his first go. He sent that mandolin, and I was like, whoa. Keep it. Yeah, so it's just amazing. And then that's Josh Vasquez on electric guitar, Mark and Cabo on bass, and Bob Sale on drums. That is one of the songs that does not feature Alec Hamilton on keys. I remember speaking to Josh Vasquez about the electric guitar part, because I wanted it to have kind of a Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison kind of a vibe. Both because I felt it fit the vibe of the song, and also because it's kind of like the whole song is kind of looking back. And it's sort of a commentary on the way that we sort of justify our behavior as people, and the way that our behavior is informed as people by our parents' influence. But we're also kind of but that's how my dad did it, So I wanted there to be a sort of sense of looking back, sort of a throwback kind of a vibe in the music. So Josh Vasquez on guitar there, I think accomplishes that detail of it's sort of an homage to the roots of that kind of a song. So anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. And especially with when I listened to your album, I noticed a lot of the songs deal with family. Mm. And especially that song, My Father Before Me, and looking back to kind of what your dad did. And I know I've experienced kind of a similar thing where as you grow up, you realize where, you think you're going to be your own man. And then as you get older, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm turning into my dad, And
yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so, but how much did your family and your family experiences and dynamics play into this album?
That's a great question. I think going into it, I didn't maybe realize how much the sort of family theme was present. But retrospectively, looking back on the project as a whole, obviously, family is an important theme, and family as a defining element of the concept of home. A lot of these songs I was writing in the past few years were right after moving to New York and right after going on tour. And that first tour, I think we talked about in my last appearance on your show. It was not what I was expecting, and it didn't line up with sort of my image of myself. And so a lot of that time was spent looking for what is, not only what is my new version of home, but also who am I? Because I'm not who I thought I was for the last few years. And a lot of that is tied up with the family thing. You've got Mama Come and Find Me. You've got My Father Before Me. You've got a song called Father of the Bear, and you've got a song called Brother. 4 out of 13 tracks is not an insignificant thing. But I guess family is just a huge sort of defining feature of my life I come from a relatively big family. I think I'm one of 5 boys, and I'm the youngest. Me and my twin brother are the youngest, which means that by the time I was old enough to have, my wits about me, there were girlfriends. My oldest brother was, he was dating his wife when he was 12, or I guess his future wife when he was 12. So at that point I was 1. So, in my experience, there's no time before my sister-in-law, Megan. She's just always been a part of my family, so, but it's just like, and family is sort of everything to us, in a big way. And, you get to a certain age, like a lot of my older brothers have kids, and, 3 out of my 5 brothers are married. So it's sort of a natural process to move on and sort of develop your own family separate from your original family unit. And that's a sort of a process that I've been involved with Scout, and it's just, the thing is, it's not a unique experience. It's something I think that pretty much everybody has to go through. And I just, of course, because I was in the middle of it, didn't realize that. And I was like, this is so hard. And so I wrote a bunch of music about it, basically.
There seemed to be a theme also, not just family, but being, I don't know, would you say that there's a connection for being longing to be home, where you talked about the last time you were here, about the first tour not being the greatest tour, and it was all new and whatever was going on there, but you had just moved to New York, and then out the door, and now you're traveling the country in Canada. There seems to be some, or am I reading that there seemed to be some longing for home in some of these songs?
Yeah, definitely. And so there's a song on the album, I think we're going to listen to it a little bit later, called Some Other Time. And I wrote that one, when the heck was that? That was actually February of 2020, right before the pandemic. So the last show that I played with the Simon & Garfunkel story was at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles. It was a huge show. It was a big event. Like, it was very exciting.
Great venue.
Oh, it was awesome, man. It was awesome. I think the only venue that tops the Pantages in my experience was, we played the Fox Theater in Detroit, which is enormous. And I think it's like somewhere around 5,000 seats. We had not sold it out, but we had about 3,300 people in the house, I think. And it was like electrifying. It was awesome. But I digress. So we were in Los Angeles, and at that time in the tour, there was another pair of Paul and Arts, because they knew that Ben and I didn't want to be doing the whole tour. So they'd cast these other guys who were insanely talented. And so that meant that I had a little bit of time on my hands during that period of the tour. I wasn't doing all the shows. And I found myself in these periods of downtime, like being like, man, I wish I was home in New York, man. And then I was thinking about it more, and I was like, I wasn't really all that happy in New York. And so what I realized was that, like, I had written all these songs about longing for home and feeling like I'm missing something, or like longing for the way that a relationship used to be. And it's like, what occurred to me when I was writing that song was that, like, I'm always longing for something. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's not always the thing that actually exists. That's the thing. It's not like that like childhood home. It's gone, baby. It's gone, baby, gone. It's not there anymore. You can't go back. You know what I mean? And it's the same, where, like, I'm just romanticizing the notion of what life was like in New York. Life in New York, the life I was longing for was a pain in the ass. But I was just longing for it because it's not where I was. And so I think that song, it's at the very end of the record. And it's there for 2 reasons. A, because it's kind of like, as Josh Turner described it, it's a playful little tap on the tushy after Mama Come and Find Me, as the audience is on their way out. But the second reason is because it's kind of like a processing of a lot of the songs that came before. A song like Father of the Bear, that's dealing with, like, an aging father and what that means for you as the child. A song like Brother, that's dealing with I miss a family member who used to be in my life and isn't anymore. A song like City Sidewalks, that's about I miss my old home, I wish I was back there. it sort of culminates in some other time, which to me is the sort of realization of I'm always going to be missing something, you know. What am I going to do about that now, you know?
I've always found that for me, the music that I listen to, and I look at my catalog of CDs and vinyl, and yes, 8-track for those of the
wow.
folks out there, going back to 8-tracks. And I've always been attracted to artists who tell a story. For me, it's not always about the beat. If you can get the rhythm in there and the beat in there, and it's really good and it helps. But the fact that they're telling a story, and every one of the songs, whether they're true or in the case of, I think, Ball and Chain sounds almost like a tad of comedy in there. I can't imagine that that you met somebody dressed up as a Ball and Chain. Who knows? But it was
I'll never tell.
It was you tell a story. You take the listener on a journey, and the more I listen to it, the more things that I pick up, and of course talking to you on the show and offline, some of the stories I can now put together. Oh, okay, yeah, So it's it for me it works, and that's why I enjoy it. As much as I do. And I think listeners do that. I think listeners want to be taken somewhere. They want to be taken away from the world, and you do that in this album. With that said,
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, with that said, Home Away is one of my favorites. And there's 13 tracks on him, and there are like 10 that are like absolute. They're all wonderful, but there's like 10 that I just continuously play. Home Away is one of them. Talk a little bit about that and the inspiration behind that.
Sure thing. Home Away is kind of like part 2 of Don't Hang Up the Phone. So Don't Hang Up the Phone I wrote when I was feeling, well, it took a couple days to write it, but I was feeling low, feeling lonely, missing Scout in Southern California. I started writing it in Santa Rosa and finished writing it in La Mirada. And we were actually headed to San Antonio. So, it's only partially embellished. But then Home Away is kind of a song about when you are close to someone. You're not, you're not like leagues and leagues apart. You're actually like in proximity with someone. You're seeing them on a fairly regular basis, but you just don't have the energy and the time to really connect, and I think that's an experience that some people can relate to, where you're in a relationship with someone and you're just both too busy and you're too tired, and you get home at the end of the day and it's like, I don't care, let's go to bed, and so you might as well not be seeing them. So I wrote that song. I started writing that song when the heck was that? In like late summer of 2019, I think, and it had a very different vibe to start. I had like a finger picking thing going on, and I had a different verse, and then the verse led into the chorus. Even on the days I'm only miles from your bedside, and I was like, that chorus is what I want to keep. Now let me figure out what I can do about this verse. And I figured out the verse in Chicago. I had bought along with my sister-in-law. I had bought my twin brother a new guitar for Christmas, and it was on tour with me. And it was the guitar I was playing that while I had a bunch of nights off in my hotel room in Chicago. And I finished writing the song there at the Ambassador Hotel. And I was pleased with it. I was like, man, this is just, I don't write a lot of upbeat, like kind of pop songs, and I like that. I like a song that is on its face. It's sort of like easy listening. And then if you listen closer to the lyrics, it's about something darker, I like that. So that's Home Away for you.
And here it is. Home Away.
I seen those mountains way out west. I seen the Himalayas too. It's not that I was unimpressed. Those mountains are the best. It's just their ridges ain't that blue. I guess what I'm trying to express is that no matter where I go, travel
just remembered a funny story. One of the elements of how that song came together. I had written the chorus when I was in New York. I went on tour with Simon and Garfunkel Story, and I was in Olympia, Washington, taking a shower. And I'm literally like, the mental image is like, I'm like washing my armpits with a bar of soap, going, "You're my home away from home. You're the Chomsky to mine." I was like, that's good. I got to write that down.
That line, I had to look that up.
Yeah, that's a deep cut. That's a deep cut. That's for those philosophy fans out there.
So, Taylor, is that your dad on the cover of the album?
Yes, sir, it is. That's my dad. That's a photo. I think it's from the late 90s. And it's a total coincidence that he's holding a mug that says Bloom Coffee Company. Someone asked on a YouTube comment, like, "Do you guys own a coffee company?" No, it's just like some niche product they probably got at the the Cracker Barrel or something.
Listening to that last song we just listened to, I noticed it seemed like there were several different styles going on at the same time. It's and almost a conglomerate of lots of music history going into that song. And I was wondering, what are your influences for you personally, but also what are your influences that you felt like you drew on for this album?
Sure. Well, there's like sort of a folksiness to the album, and not folksy as in like folk music, but folksy as in like country folksiness that I've discovered. Like I don't have much of a background in listening to country music. I've been recently getting more into it, but I've been getting into it because I've been noticing that I've been like kind of writing country influenced stuff. Home Away isn't so much that way though. Like Home Away is it's a pretty poppy song, and one of the major musical sort of influences for that song is John Mayer. Like that song doesn't really sound so much like a John Mayer track, because John Mayer stuff is a lot more like, generally speaking, it's a lot more like soulful and sometimes bluesy and stuff. But for a lot of Josh Vasquez's tones, he knows how much I love John Mayer. And so a lot of his tones are like a very clean kind of strat tone, like a very unadorned strat, like early John Mayer stuff. And so like during the outro of the chorus of that song, "We love slow dancing to love songs," and the guitar goes, that like strat tone is very much influenced by John Mayer. Okay. I think we even said like go for like a Heart of Life kind of a vibe. So, and then I believe when Mark was laying down the bass for that song, he was like, "I'm going full Pete Wentz on this guy," which for any listeners who don't know, Pete Wentz is the bassist from Fall Out Boy, which, to be honest, I used to listen to quite a bit. And it was basically like 50% Billy Joel, 50% Fall Out Boy, like for like probably a whole year of my youth. Just like walking my dogs in the morning at like 7:30 and being like, "Mama Leone left a note on the door." Or then being like, fucking, "We're going downtown in the run." But like switching seamlessly between those two things. So like, that's another one, is like Billy Joel is like, I love Billy Joel's music.
Me too. Yeah.
He's awesome. He's so cool.
Yep.
And like, it's funny because I don't know if I like listen to the stuff that influenced Billy Joel. Like I'm not really a fan of like a lot of the stuff that Billy Joel is probably a fan of, but I like what Billy Joel does with it. Like something about I like the cleverness of his lyrics. I think he manages, and I like when artists take like influence from a certain genre, like a deep cut of like, this is how they do it in like the blues world. And they just take the bits that work for like easy listening and like make it easily accessible. Lake Street Dive is another band that does that. They have like pop, R&B, like jazz, sometimes country, like bluegrass influence. And what they do is they make it really digestible they like write very pop forward music that's heavily influenced by that stuff. And that's what I like. That's what I think Billy Joel does. He's got like an influence from like jazz and like funk as well. And he makes it accessible.
Yeah. And I'm a big Billy Joel fan as well. And of course, I'm a drummer. But Liberty DeVito, his drummer, is like just the way he orchestrates everything and plays with dynamics to make this story. He follows the story of what Billy Joel is doing with his drumming. And it's just like this beautiful thing.
And that's kind of the thing with music in general, man. It's like across genres, like we're all using the same 12 notes, you know? And so like, it's kind of a miracle that anyone is able to write something new, you know, because, there's only 7 chords in a normal major scale. Like there's not that much to work with.
Right.
So it's amazing that it's like, there's not that much to work with. And yet like, there must be so much to work with because there's thousands of amazing songs out there,
Right.
If you're just joining us, shame on you. Go back and listen. You missed a lot of great stuff. We're talking to Taylor Bloom about his new album, his debut album called My Father Before Me. Taylor, before we continue, why don't you tell our listeners how they can find you on YouTube and websites and all that kind of stuff? How can people find you?
Sure thing. If you go to the URL address TaylorBloomNYC.com, that'll be my website. That'll give you all sorts of info on me. You can find info on the website and all the players. You can find liner notes and lyrics on there if that's of interest to you. And if you want to check out some of what I'm up to, you can search me on YouTube. Probably your best bet is to search Taylor Bloom, the Boxer. That so far is my most successful video. Thanks very much to Josh Turner for promoting it. So if you're a Simon and Garfunkel fan, check that out. That's me and my friend Ben Cooley singing The Boxer in his camper van. It's old hat for us. We've done it a million times, and we love to do it every time. So if that sounds of interest to you, definitely check it out. Let me think what else. You can also find me on Patreon if that's of interest to you. I do accept patrons on there. I'm not the most tech savvy individual, so I haven't really kept up with a lot of people will really go in on Patreon and be like, if you do this, then you get this. If you do that, then you get that. I was just like, if you want to support me, then you can. If not, it's all good. Thanks anyway. So that's how you can get in touch with me.
We're going to put the links to all of your channel and your website, and when you do another Crowdcast, we'll add that to the episodes that we have out there now for people to listen to, so they can check that out. I think there's one that's already out there that's still available if people want to take a look at that. Your first Crowdcast,
definitely,
was a great night. The song we're going to listen to now, Some Other Time. Why don't you talk about that and the influences to that song, and it kind of stands out from the rest of the record.
It does to the degree that I was kind of nervous about it, because I was like, this doesn't fit, man. This is not. There's 12 songs here that all kind of work together, and this 13th one really doesn't seem to fit. So that I mentioned a little earlier. I think I wrote that whole song in one day, which is very unusual for me. Most of the time it takes me months to write a song. But I wrote that whole song in one day in LA while we were playing at the Pantages. I was like, I took myself to an Intelligentsia coffee in LA, and then I went over to the theater. They were playing a show, so I snuck in the back and went down into one of the unused dressing rooms. I grabbed one of the guitars that wasn't being used, and that was one that the lyrics came to me at the same time that the chords did, so I just had to go down and double check that it all worked. But as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a realization kind of a song, where a lot of the songs are sort of trying to process the emotions behind loss of home, evolution of relationships with people, and things changing in a young person's life. And that song was kind of this wait a second, I'm upset about everything. Why? And it's also one that, we were just talking about influences. It's heavily influenced by that sort of pop punk culture, and that kind of vibe in the music. Like pretty much the whole song, my part on most of the whole song is just power chords, which is highly unusual for me to play a song that's mostly power chords. And it's such a simple chord progression as well. So, and I think a lot of the guys knew when they listened to the scratch track that I did, like the demo, they were like, oh, this is going to be a pop punk song. Sick. And it was funny because like Josh Vasquez was like, I'm ready to go like full Blink-182 on this guy. And Josh Turner was like, yeah, we'll see about that. But I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. And then there's also an element in there I want to mention, which is Alec Hamilton is playing the synthesizer on it, which is sort of an unusual choice for a pop punk song. But it's sort of got this, it adds this element that's kind of like a throwback vibe. And there's this band called Walk the Moon that sort of put that in my head. They had this hit a few years ago called Shut Up and Dance. That was like, Billboard Top 20 or whatever. But before that, they had a bunch of tracks on this record that were just like, like really catchy and unusual poppy kind of music with this awesome synthesizer. The lead singer plays the synthesizer and it's amazing. And I was just like, I just felt that was like the right kind of thing to do the solo. I had originally thought that the solo should be electric guitar, but I was like, that's just a little too rock and roll. I kind of want to scale it back and make it a little bit more like poppy. So, I think that's everything I had to say about it. I just kind of word vomit about every song.
From his debut album, My Father Before Me, here's Taylor Bloom's Some Other Time.
Seems no matter what a person knows, loneliness is everywhere you go. Seems no matter what a person does, pining for the past is in the blood. The lights are shining and the band is loud. The bass is feeding on the hungry crowd. But once that ghost light hits the center stage, it's near impossible to turn the page. I'm not hungry, and I'm not tired. I'm safe and sound, and sometimes I'm inspired, but I'm always longing for some other time. Some other time. Wonder how they got to where they are. What music do they put on in the car? Did they know from go who they would be? So come on, peace. I'm not happy, but I don't even think that's true. I am wondering if you ever feel that too, because I'm always longing for some of the time.
We're talking with Taylor Bloom, who just released his debut album called My Father Before Me. It's available everywhere that you can stream music, so please check it out. So, Taylor, have you got anything coming up? What's the future hold?
Well, outside of music, I'm working on a live streamed play at the moment because, I did a lot of theater in college. I studied theater in college and then came to New York to sort of pursue theater. So a friend of mine has written a play for two other friends of mine. Oh, well, one other friend of mine and then Scout to be in. And I'm sort of helping to direct it. It's going to be at the Soho Playhouse in April. So it's going to be live streamed so anyone can tune in and watch it. And they haven't officially announced it yet, but the announcement will come out on this coming Monday. So I might have a link for you to post. So it should be really fun. It's going to be like very well done because the theater that we're working with is providing us with lots of resources, which is awesome. And then back in the music world, I'm currently I'm finishing up the writing for a second album. I've got it most of the way written, and I'm just sort of like putting the finishing touches on the last few tracks. And then I'm going to start, I guess, working away once again in the same way I did before with these same players and see if we can't get another one laid down.
So it's Taylor Bloom debut album called My Father Before Me. It is available everywhere that you stream music, Spotify, Apple, wherever you see it, actually on YouTube. You can check out Taylor's YouTube channel. Search for Taylor Bloom, the boxer, and you'll see everything. And make sure you subscribe, like his videos, click the bell, notification bell, whatever they call that thing, that you'll be notified at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning. You wake up to Taylor Bloom in a video. He's still dropping videos every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
And of course his website, TaylorBloomNYC.com, where you can find out all about Taylor and his music and his acting and the new album, My Father Before Me.
The song that we're going to close this podcast out with has got to be my personal favorite song on this album. And when I heard it for the first time, it spoke to me. It moved me. I loved it. It's a great song. And I was wondering, Taylor, if you can just tell us about your inspiration for it, maybe about how y'all created it and recorded it, and just maybe what it means to you, and then kind of expound on the song a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm so glad that it spoke to you. It's definitely one of the more desperate songs on the album. It's the sort of narration is definitely coming from a difficult place in the person's life. And it's another song that's sort of born from a seed of truth. I did start writing it when I was in Madison, Wisconsin. And it was during my first Simon and Garfunkel tour. And it was sort of at the beginnings of my realization that like what I was doing was not what I thought that I was meant to be doing. In retrospect, it was something I really enjoyed doing. I just wasn't really prepared for it. But the whole thing is kind of based on that first chord. I have my guitar right here. Initially this song I was working on it in E, and in E, there's this lovely chord shape you can play. And that was what the initial beginning chord was. When I woke up, I was in Madison. And it's not the chord that the song ended up sort of like starting with, but it was the sort of seed that was planted in my head. Like, man, that's a nice chord. And so, yeah, that song is really kind of a thesis statement for the album, of just kind of the way that it falls in the record. It's the 12th song out of 13, and the last song on the record is Some Other Time, which we just heard. And after a long journey of dealing with loss, and dealing with growth and feeling unprepared for that growth, in songs like City Sidewalks and Father of the Bear, it's kind of just a cry for help of a song. It's just like, I just can't do it by myself. I need some help. And it's kind of like, I think the primary sort of inspiration is like literally like calling for help from your mom. Like, I just like, it's like, calling for your mommy, like in a torture scene. Like if the object of the torture is just like calling for, all right, I'm calling for my mom. Like, I need some help. And that's kind of the angle. I wanted to write it so that it was ambiguous enough that like mama was sort of like cause in a lot of like Southern songwriting, like a lot of country music, like mama is like an object of desire, like, so I wanted it to be kind of open. Like it could be a romantic partner as well as it could be, an actual mother figure. I wanted to leave it up to the interpretation of the listener to some degree. But I also wanted it to be huge. I wanted it to sort of start small and then get very big, because that's kind of how the feeling goes in my experience. That kind of feeling of just complete, like, I'm so lost, I'm so confused, I don't know what to do. It starts as a very sort of insular feeling, like it's very small and it's very sad, and then it becomes this like, God, I just feel so sad. And the guys really took that to heart, and they made this huge ending to the song. And that comes from Bob Sale, the drummer, who recorded a scratch track and was like, so I didn't come in until the bridge. How does that sound? Like, are we cool with that? And I was like, Bob, you are a genius. Because as you'll hear when we play the song, most of it, like the first 2/3 are kind of sparse. And then when the bridge comes in, it is just enormous. It's huge. And I love that. And I had also spoken to Josh Vasquez, the lead guitar player, about doing kind of a Queen Brian May guitar part. And that's because, so as I've mentioned, like a lot of this process is like built on the different interpretations that different members of the band have. So the reason that I got the idea to do like a Brian May guitar part is because I had asked Alec Hamilton to play piano from the beginning of the song. And he added this walk up in the left hand. You'll hear in the bass hand of the keys. You'll hear this like, do, 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 do. When I woke up, I wasn't. And I was like, that sounds like Queen. That sounds like Queen to me. And so I was immediately like, I love it. We're going full Queen on this. And so that's why I asked Josh Vasquez to play like a Brian May guitar part, which he did, and he did beautifully. It sounds so cool. And I didn't even realize until after the fact that he was playing it on the Brian May signature guitar, and he was playing it with an actual coin, because Brian May has played with like a 5 pence piece or something for all of his career. Maybe it's 10. I don't know. But he's always played with like a metal coin. That's part of how he gets his sound. And Josh was like, I'm playing with a coin, baby. And so he played all the guitar part that you're hearing when the electric guitar comes in the bridge is Josh playing with a coin on the Brian May signature guitar.
Oh, that's cool.
It was so badass. He told me afterwards, and I was like, what? That is so sick, bro. Nice. And then another thing that I just wanted to mention about the song is the very end of the song. Alec plays this beautiful kind of ascending piano part. And And something about that, I just love that. I mean, I love Alec's chops in general, and that's a very Alec thing to do, is to end on this very elaborate chord. But there's something about it that like it kind of feels like at the end of this like very difficult emotional experience, there's kind of like this piece of like positive rise at the end. And I just love that. And a final detail that I'll tell you is that the acoustic guitar that you hear is actually the original demo track guitar. So I had originally written the song in A. When I woke up, I was in Madison. And my guitar like really sings in A, like it just loves A as a note. My guitar loves A, but I had lowered the key to G. So that's a full step, because some of the stuff at the end vocally was a little difficult for me in A, because I'm a baritone in the classic sense. And Josh Turner was like, man, that acoustic guitar tone you got in the demo is really good. So I'm going to use that. But it was in the wrong key. So he took that demo and he just lowered it by a full step. I didn't even know you could do that. So that acoustic guitar that you hear throughout the whole song is the original demo recording. I don't know what I did that made it sound so good, like the way I placed the mic or whatever. It's the original demo recording, and he just lowered it by a full step, which is kind of like a cool little detail about the song.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a full journey, this tune, like a long and winding road. And I'm pleased with where it led us.
That's super cool. Well, it's a super beautiful song. And why don't we play it here, Jerry?
Folks, the album is entitled My Father Before Me. The artist is Taylor Bloom. Check out his website, TaylorBloomNYC.com, YouTube, and the album, again, My Father Before Me, is streaming everywhere. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us again. I look forward to having you back. You are welcome to come on anytime you just want to chat. We can talk about music. We can talk about PBR. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, you are always welcome on the show. And please keep us up to date on what it is you're working on and how things are going, because our audience is very interested in hearing about you. Again, you have the most downloads for our podcast. We appreciate that, and our listeners certainly appreciate you. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I can't thank you enough for indulging me and giving me a platform to talk a little bit about these songs. It's extremely meaningful for me as a songwriter, and I also have a tremendous amount of fun talking to you guys. So thank you for having me on again. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope to be on again soon.
All right, so this is going to be Mama Come and Find Me from Taylor Bloom's debut album entitled My Father Before Me.
When I woke up, I was in Madison. Having traveled through the night, with Virginia calling my name again. I made my daily wish to fly. I stepped off the bus and I took a breath. Hoping for that valley air. Then my heart endured a tiny death. Because I knew I wasn't there. Somewhere out on the road, I felt the load had grown, and with it the fear more strong every year that I'm on my take me home. I am no longer healthy. I can't be left alone. Mama, come and find me. I've spent these last few years treading water, saying it won't be too long now. But the shore I dove from is crumbling, and the tide is going out. Somehow over the years I taught my tears to dry. Now that my childhood is gone, I've mown my last lawn, and I can't even cry. So mama, come and find me. Oh mama, take me home. I am no longer healthy. I can't be left alone. Mama, won't you save me? Oh mama, hold my hand. Tell me that I'm worthy, and that you understand. This land is your land, this land ain't my land. I've had good times here, but I'm seeking dry land. Trouble is my home shore sunk to the seafloor. I feel most at ease with a pedal to the floor. So mama, come and find me. So mama, come and find me. Oh mama, take me home. I am no longer healthy. I can't be left alone. Mama, won't you save me? Oh mama, hold my hand. Tell me that I'm worthy, and that you understand. Mama, come and find me. Mama, take me home.